But then boom, all of a sudden, my wife and I take a trip to Hawaii. I happen to do a 45-day challenge video up on top of a mountain. It gets picked up by Dan Patrick's show, blew up. And I'm like, well, okay, people are talking about this. This is going viral is not the right word for it, but it was very prominent on social media. I'm like, how do we use this momentum to do something positive?
One of the first steps in building your personal brand is to create your very own website. This week's sponsor, Bluehost, makes it very easy and inexpensive to do that. I've used Bluehost for years. There's no shortage of hosting companies out there, but their price, one-step integration with WordPress, and customer service make them a no-brainer. To get started, go to ronmckeefery.com/Bluehost. There, I walk you through step-by-step how to get your very first website in just minutes. Buying through my link is no extra cost to you, but it does support me and the show, allow me to continue to bring this show to you for free. Again, go to ronmckeefery.com/Bluehost. Now let's get on with the show. Hey guys, welcome back to Overtime. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and I am on a mission to help coaches retire being coaches. If this is your first time listening, I'd encourage you to subscribe on any of the podcast platforms that exist, or if you're like me and you like video, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast or my personal YouTube channel that this will live on. I just enjoy being able to listen and watch these speakers. As always, I appreciate those of you that like, share, comment, leave reviews. It just helps me continue to help as many coaches as I possibly can. This week, I'm joined by a friend of mine, Aaron Feld. I'll let Aaron talk about his coaching journey. But we've got to be pretty good friends over the last couple of years, and somebody that I've watched from afar, and really, really impressed with what he's doing and how he's building his coaching career, as well as some of the entrepreneurial things. So, man, appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Coach.
Aaron, talk a little bit really quickly, just kind of, Reader's Digest version of your coaching career, and then at what point in that journey did you kind of get bit by the entrepreneurial bug?
Well, I actually studied business in college. I got an undergrad degree in business, and I went into construction right when I got done with college football. But I was still training for the NFL. I got picked up for 7 whole days by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hold your applause. And when I got cut, and I realized football was over for me physically, I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this degree. I'm going to go make money. I've always been a business mentality, whatever. And so I go into I'll start working at a Gold's Gym. I worked my way up pretty high in the hierarchy there in just a few short months. And when the top dogs came in, were like, hey, we want to take you to upper level management training, and I realized that I was about to have a career with Gold's Gym. It scared the daylights out of me, and I panicked and I ran back to football as fast as my feet could carry me, and I started working at UAB. The program that shut down a couple of years ago. And I got out before that happened. But from UAB, I jumped. I was a full-time countable 5-string coach, even though I was paid like an intern. Yep. And then from there, I went and volunteered for free at the University of Alabama. I left the University of Alabama to take the head job at a D2 school called North Alabama in Florence, Alabama. And my contacts that I had made at Alabama came back literally 3 months later and took me to the University of Georgia, where I spent 3 seasons before I had the opportunity to come interview for the head job at the University of Oregon, and then ultimately ended up here.
So you've always had a business mind, and you've kind of, tried to integrate that into coaching career. It's not as easy as people might think. How have you taken what you learned in undergrad and applied that to kind of the profession of coaching?
In all honesty, I use the stuff I learned in business more than anything. For example, I took a class my last semester of school called business policy, and our professor was he was a real, I don't want to say any bad words. He was tough. He was an awesome guy, but he was tough. And the first day he came in and he told, he introduced himself. He wrote his name up on the board. His name was up on the board. And he introduced himself as his first name and went around the room. And everybody, he said, I'm going to introduce myself, and you say hi. my name, and then you say, I'm so and so. And so he said, hey, I honestly don't remember his first name. But anyway, he introduced himself as his first name, but everybody said Mr. Last name.
Yeah.
Everybody. And it got to me, and I'm like, dude, he introduced himself as, let's say Mr. or as John. So I said, hey, John, I'm Aaron. I'm glad to be in your class. And it was just, I could tell from that interaction that he, like, I had done something either good or bad, didn't know which. And then when he got in front of the class, he basically said, if somebody introduces themselves as their first name in business and you call them Mr., whether you're the same level or even above them, from their perspective, they become your superior. And it was really profound. And that's just like one simple little thing. But it stuck with me because since taking over this program, I'm the youngest. I was the youngest guy on our staff for a whole year until I brought one other guy in this past season. And it was really challenging for me. I've got a man on our staff who's, in his 50s, and to work with him with respect, but also keep the hierarchy the way it needs to be, and the chain of command and everything like that. And it was a challenge for him, but I have to believe that the understanding that I got from my business courses and the way that in learning the sociology and the psychology of business helped me help him, because I know that was a tough transition for him. A 30-year-old kid comes in here, starts bossing you around. That can't be easy.
Not at all. No.
But had I taken kinesiology classes all through undergrad and never been exposed to this stuff, I really honestly feel like I might have fallen flat on my face without the experience of leading a program like this before.
Yeah, it's something I've often said. I think, it wasn't until I really started learning or, pulling inspiration from other disciplines that I become the coach that I thought I was capable of being. I think for no matter what sport, whether or not you're a strength coach like we are, or a basketball coach or hockey coach or whatever, when you start pulling from some of these other disciplines that are way more established than coaching, it'll accelerate your learning curve.
Yeah.
As part of you're in a pretty high profile program at this point in your career, and things come with that, opportunities come with that, attention comes with that, all those types of things. This is not the time in your life necessarily to build a business, but what you have done is also kind of really focused on other passions in your life. You've got a deep-seated passion to help our younger athletes, or our athletes with disabilities. And so you've created a campaign, Fill the Sleeves, to benefit Special Olympics, I believe in Oregon, I think.
Right.
But talk a little bit about your motivation behind doing that, and why, and how your kind of business acumen's kind of really helped with that.
Well, our school system that I grew up in Homewood, Alabama, has a wonderful special needs program. People come from all over the state and the Southeast to be a part of that program. And they even have, once individuals graduate the high school level, because I believe there's an age limit, 21 years old or whatever, and you have to be moved out of the high school system or the school system. But they have basically an adult continuing learning place called the Exceptional Foundation. But all through, my youth in middle school and early in high school, we participated with, I think they call it unified sports most places, but, Special Olympics, softball, kickball, bowling, that kind of stuff. And being a part of that, it just seemed so normal and natural to me to be a part of that kind of stuff. And then once I got older, I realized that it's not normal. People don't volunteer for things like this often. And so being able to bring awareness to these athletes, and don't get it twisted. These guys, these men and women, these young men and women are athletes. They're competitors. They take it serious. They had a powerlifting meet this time last year, which had to get canceled this year because of COVID. But I went and watched their powerlifting meet, and it was phenomenal. You got people who can barely lift the bar, but they're giving 100% effort. You got people who are actually competitive and would be competitive within their normal age and weight. It's incredible. And so just competitive spirit is 90% of what I do. It was what I cultivate, and you can't teach it. You can cultivate it and encourage it, but that's what we do. And so seeing that from these people, unbridled passion and energy, it's incredible. So when I found out there was a funding issue in the state of Oregon, and specifically hyper locally here in Eugene, Springfield. We wanted to do something to help with their summer programs. And so when the Fill the Sleeves thing kind of kicked up and kicked off and took off, we decided to capitalize on that and funnel some of that, all of that resource to our local Special Olympics chapter.
Yeah, obviously my goal with this show is to show how coaches can create these multiple streams of income, around their coaching career. But it's not all about just monetarily creating benefits for your life and bringing value to your life. It's also about being able to do the things that you want to do to leave a legacy and make an impact in this world. And that's ultimately what makes coaches great. And so this is an incredible thing. Let's talk, the coaches that are listening, I think are all motivated by the story of, how much money have you been able to raise real quick?
So we did just over $10,000 donated the first year, and we just recently were able to send $7,000 this year. The problem is you can't spend so much time. You can't divert your attention from what you're supposed to be doing. So we just weren't as efficient with the way we did things this year because it does take a lot of time. And so we didn't maximize our donation this year as we would have liked to, even though we sold way more gear, way more shirts. So that's where, being for charity and you can only have so much time and energy to put into, but we've, as of right now, just over $17,000.
I mean, it's incredible. It's $17,000 that wasn't there that is going to definitely directly benefit. And whether that's $1 or that's $17,000 or $1,007,000, it's definitely going to bring value to that organization for sure. So there's tons of coaches that are listening to this that have an idea of some impact that they want to leave. Talk through how simple it can be. Like that first year, you were like, I just want to do this, but then you probably kind of said, okay, well, I can actually create some good out of this and make a donation. Mm-hmm. Talk through the steps for a coach that's maybe wanting to do something similar and how easy that can
be. Well, here's the big thing. Strength coaches, we're known for getting information last minute and making things happen quickly. We had our whole staff back in the office last week, just for a day to set up for Monday. And I forgot how quickly we can get things. We moved our whole weight room in 3 hours. We shifted everything around. It was just incredibly how quick we can get things done. And so my advice to people is don't force things. Don't try to, this is my idea and I'm going to make it happen. Take what the world gives you. Take what the industry is giving you. If you see an opportunity, you just got to be ready to treat it like a strength coach and move fast. And so the Fill the Sleeves is something, we didn't name it. The 45-day challenge is something that we have done since I was in college. It used to be just during training camp, and it was a specialist thing. I was a long snapper, and every day it was 100 biceps and triceps while everybody else was practicing and working hard because I snapped balls and was standing around doing nothing. This is the end of my career, by the way, when I finally accepted that I was a long snapper. And that's where it started. And then I got into coaching, and it's like, well, 30 days isn't enough. I'm trying to get a big, juicy pump before national television week 1. So we bumped it to 45 days. Right. And it was usually right after we came back from vacation. And so anyway, the point is that 45-day challenge has been consistent for years. But then, boom, all of a sudden, my wife and I take a trip to Hawaii. I happen to do a 45-day challenge video up on top of a mountain. It gets picked up by Dan Patrick's show. It blew up. And I'm like, well, okay, people are talking about this. This is going viral is not the right word for it, but it was very prominent on social media. I'm like, how do we use this momentum to do something positive? And I'd be lying if I didn't say my first instinct was, how can we put some money in our pocket? And because that's human nature. But then when I looked at it, I'm like, this is going to be way too much effort for me to take away from our program, my kids, what we're doing, right? For this to be solely to benefit myself. I can't justify that, but I also can't waste this momentum. It would be silly to let this go to waste. So my wife and I jumped on it. Thankfully, Dan Patrick for the design. I ended up, I paid for the artwork, but our contribution to it was we bought the artwork. We did all the front end stuff. Right. We spent, I don't know how, it was not cheap, but did a bunch of that stuff, and that was our contribution. And then it took off, and we did it went great. But you got to be ready to capitalize on the opportunities that come. Don't try to force a square peg in a round hole.
with that comes some cynicism, maybe around the country, around the world, whatever you want to say. Like, how are you able to do this and train our athletes at a high level, or you're just trying to build your personal brand or whatever may come? Like, how do you respond to those types of things and justify the time that you do spend?
There's two ways. One, not caring what people that have never met me think. I do care what people think. And I think they're like, I don't care what people think. That's a bad way to look at things. You need to care what other people think. You don't need to let that affect who you are at your core. But I do think it's important to not worry about what people who have no idea who you are and what you're all about, not letting those people, even their opinions even matter. Because if you're not part of this, I've never even had a conversation with you. I don't care what you think about what I'm doing. I can't. It would just be ridiculous. And so that's the first part. But the second part is I work constantly 12-hour days. Okay. And yeah, 2 hours of that often is working out, but that's also part of my job, So you're looking at a 12-hour workday where you probably spend 10 hours actually doing hardcore work. And in 6 to 7 of those hours where you're physically on the floor training. As soon as I'm done with all of that, do I have to dedicate the rest of my 24 hours to someone else, or can I dedicate some of that time to myself and my family and my mental health and my spiritual fortitude? So like when people say, well, you're spending all this time doing this, how are you serving our team? I serve my team. Our staff serves our team relentlessly. But we also come together as a group and we encourage each other to read, and we encourage each other to take, like I'm telling you, at 2:00, and we're a morning operation. We're done with athletes by noon most days. At 2:00, 3:00, if my guys aren't already working out and trying to get out of the door, I'm telling them, it's like, hey, I'm going to put a group thread with your wives and tell them you're off work. Yeah, we'll see how long you stay here after that. So like, I want my guys to get out. I don't guard a desk. I don't want it. So if the work is done, I move on. And you know what? Sometimes I get phone calls at 9:00 and have to go back up to the office. Sometimes I get calls at 11:00, which I rarely answer. But if my phone rings a couple of times, I pick it up and I got to do things. That's the job you signed up for. But nobody signed up to be a strength coach 24/7.
Right.
Just like people telling us strength coaches, shut up and coach. Like, you do your job. I'm like, dude, I do my job. But like, if I have an opinion on social media about things going on in the world or whatever, like I'm not a strength coach 24/7. I'm allowed to have an opinion. And that's why, like, I'm encouraging more coaches to have an opinion and be individuals and don't just be your job. Don't just be your program.
Yeah.
It's not good for your program.
Well, the other part of that equation is how many coaches are out there, watching TV for 4 hours or, doing whatever, frivolous thing, going to the bar drinking for 4 hours,
Mm-hmm.
versus taking that time and trying to find some sort of passion like this to pour into as well, and instead of being the internet troll that you're just going to sit there and scroll, Instagram and comment on everybody else's life,
Mm-hmm.
reach out and get to know somebody, but also look and see how they're possibly making that stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool part about what you're doing is, yes, you have a big job. You have a big responsibility of a big job. But I've talked about this a couple of times in the show. You're human, and you have to have meaningful distractions as well. You have to have things that are not consuming your whole life, that are outside of just your family. And this is a meaningful distraction where, hey man, I get to do some social good, but I also can check out of being a strength coach for just a few hours a week.
Well, I haven't actually talked about this publicly, but last year, right before the season started, I had a breakdown, and I was this close to walking away from this industry. And it wasn't any specific person. It wasn't it wasn't a coach. It wasn't an administrator. It wasn't anything specific. It was too much. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't training. I wasn't reading. I wasn't doing all the things that I believe are important, because all of a sudden, in our second season, wins and like the first year, I didn't care about wins and losses. I was helping build a culture. And the second year, it was like I was so caught up in the results that it really hurt me a lot. And I mean, it was bad. And I was really, really struggling. I was struggling at home. I was struggling at office, and I was constantly unhappy. Was not taking care of myself. And thankfully I'm surrounded by a staff of men who are phenomenal human beings, and they rallied around and helped me get through it. And then we met at the end of the season, and we promised ourselves that we're never doing that again. We've eradicated negativity from our program. If someone's venting, come vent. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to contribute to the negativity, but I'm going to let you get it out. And then if I need to vent, I'm going to go somewhere else. And we lean on each other, and we don't get in these negative spirals. There's just so much negativity out there. And if I wasn't doing things like fill the sleeves, if I wasn't doing things like, charitable work here, or the public speaking things that I've done, if I wasn't doing those things, I would be going back to that old pattern, and I'm not doing that again.
Right. Well, I know we didn't talk about this off camera or even the prep work for this, but I mean, this is something that I think everybody that decides to put themselves out there in any way opens the door for criticism, right?
Mm-hmm.
It opens the door for people that have never met you, have never said anything, that don't know anything about what you're doing or who you are or how you've been. And they have their opinions. How do you recommend somebody kind of dealing with, the trolls, the people that are just not willing to get to know somebody, that just want to have their opinion from the cheap seats? Because I mean, I'm not sure what your social media following is up to now, but you're a pretty visible guy. I'm sure, I know I do. I get my fair share of people constantly saying, hey, do you do any coaching ever? I mean, come walk a day in my shoes and see how it's funny. How do you handle it? And what advice do you have for that coach that's going to put themselves out there all of a sudden and it's going to get some cheap shots from the distance?
Well, you can't respond to everybody. It's just not possible. But there are some that I feel like you need to respond to, and not for them, for you. There's certain attacks and there's certain cut downs that you just have to respond to. But I have a rule, and I share this with my wife all the time. You get one comment. You can't go back and get into a back and forth. You get one comment, but the key is this. And I don't know if you can edit this out, but one of my assistant coaches, football coaches, refers to him and his wife refer to the way that I deal with hecklers and trolls as educated ass whoopings. And I just got a kick out of that because, especially with all this social injustice stuff that's happening, that's become a big thing. I've broken some rules and really gone into it with people back and forth. It's just because this topic's so important. But you have to be respectful. You have to be factual. You have to be coming from a place of understanding. If you're having to Google stuff to put it in your argument, stop. Don't have the argument.
Right. Right.
If it's something that's inside you that you have a full understanding and you have a good grasp on it and you feel strongly about it, by all means, defend yourself. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of people out there who they'll say mean things to you just to get you going and don't even really believe what they're saying. So you can't get caught up in that stuff. And all it takes is one slip up, one cuss word, one completely baseless statement of fact that is false to ruin your credibility. And that's what people want.
Yeah. There's a pretty well-known entrepreneur, Gary Vaynerchuk, that has, quite a massive following and puts himself out there in a big, big way. And he always says, and I agree with, is like, when asked that question, he always says, I feel sorry for that person. Mm-hmm. Like for them to have have that much hate and get it out and find a way to take the time to do that. Like I feel sorry for that person, that's consuming them that much. And, it is what it is. But I think you and I have had conversations even offline about how, like, at the end of the day, man, you just, like, as long as you know who you are and what you're doing and it's pure, damn everybody else, Well,
if I put my whole life on Instagram and Twitter, people would be bored to tears. 90% of what I do is program, sit at my computer and type in Excel and read articles so I'll be programming and I'll send a text in our group thread. I'm like, hey, does anybody have anything written down on, like, the processes of foot contacts for intro to plyometric work? And then I'll get 6 articles And so I'll start reading articles and putting stuff together. So that's kind of how my staff supports the programming. And then we get together and talk about it and whatever. But that's what I spend most of my time doing. And it's really, really boring. So if you're judging my life based on what you see on Instagram and Twitter, you're missing most of it. And so that's why I try not to judge people on their comments on Twitter, trying to judge people on the content they put out. And not to mention, I'm not putting out the stuff that we do with our team on purpose.
Right.
Protect your IP,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it also goes back to, what you're doing and how you're doing it with your team you don't want to leverage that for the wrong things. You don't want that to come across that way. And I'm really protective of that time. Like that's my time with the team, and but outside of that, I'll share and hopefully bring value. And that's ultimately what I try to do. And I know that's what you try to do is you just try to bring value to people's lives. That's what we do in coaching. Help them become the best version of themselves. And that's what we're put on this earth to do. And whether or not we're doing that for hundreds of thousands of dollars at some of these programs, or we're doing it for free, like we've all done, we'll continue to do that in any shape or form. So, man, I appreciate you talking about that. Where can people kind of follow up with you and learn more about Fill the Sleeves and support that and the whole deal?
Well, the biggest thing is ftsapparel.com is kind of where we base our shirt line, but it's not operating year round. We only operate, and I honestly don't know what we're going to do this year because of the COVID deal. We're still working out a plan for that. But following me on Instagram or Twitter, it's just at Coach Feld. Anything, I'm always going to support it from my platform. So anything that happens will get put on there. But like I said, it's just one of those things where if the momentum is slowly dying, then I'm not going to continue to throw time, energy, money, and effort into something that's not going to be effective. You got to be willing to let things go. So hopefully we can keep it rolling for a little bit longer. But if it keeps trending down for like it did from year 1 to year 2, then it becomes more effort than the benefit, and we got to look for something else to help out with our our local people.
That's fantastic. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate you, Coach.
That's it for this week's episode of Overtime. Thanks to this week's guest and our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out RonMcKeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about my other projects. While there, make sure you join me in thanking our guest for sharing in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, search Ron McKeefery on YouTube or Overtime on any of the podcast directories. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated, and they help me to help as many coaches as I can. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of